I had always been drawn to the abandoned mansion on the outskirts of town. Rumors swirled about its dark past, whispers of a family that vanished without a trace, leaving behind only shadows. One evening, emboldened by the thrill of the unknown and a group of friends daring me, I decided to explore the decaying structure. We laughed and joked as we approached, but with each step, a chill crawled up my spine. The mansion loomed ahead, its windows like hollow eyes staring down at us. Vines snaked up the walls, and the once grand facade was now a crumbling relic. I pushed open the creaking door, which protested with a long, eerie moan. The air inside was stale, thick with dust and the smell of rot. We entered, flashlights cutting through the darkness, revealing a grand hallway lined with peeling wallpaper and faded portraits of long-gone faces that seemed to watch our every move. As I wandered deeper into the mansion, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to thicken around me. I could hear the distant sound of laughter, but it faded as I stepped further into a dimly lit parlor. Dust particles swirled in the beam of my flashlight, creating a surreal effect that sent a shiver down my spine. The furniture was draped in white sheets, ghostly remnants of a life once lived. I approached a grand piano in the corner, its keys yellowed and cracked. I brushed my fingers over the surface, and a wave of memories flooded my mind. Laughter, music, warmth. I shook my head, trying to dispel the strange sensations. Then I heard it, a soft whisper, barely audible, like a breath against my ear. "Help us." The words sent chills through me, and I spun around, scanning the room. The laughter from my friends faded into silence, replaced by an oppressive quiet that settled like a weight on my chest. "Guys," I called out, but my voice trembled in the stillness. I took a step back, and the floor creaked ominously beneath my weight. I turned to leave, but the air felt different, heavier, as if something was closing in on me. The whispers grew louder, swirling around me. "Stay, join us." My heart raced, and I rushed toward the door, only to find it now standing ajar. The mansion seemed to shift, the hallway stretching out into an endless void. Panic gripped me as I stumbled forward, the shadows writhing along the walls like living creatures, reaching for me. I could still hear the whispers, a cacophony of voices filled with anguish, each one calling out for help, yet demanding I stay. I dashed through the hallway, my flashlight flickering, illuminating fleeting glimpses of movement in the corners of my vision, shadows darting just beyond the light. I turned a corner and nearly collided with a figure, a girl, pale and ethereal, her eyes wide with terror.
"Please, you have to get out," she gasped, her voice trembling. "They're coming for you." "Who? Who's coming?" I managed to stammer, the terror clawing at my throat. "The ones who never left," she whispered, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "They're trapped here just like me. They want you to join them." Before I could respond, she faded into the shadows, and I felt a chill wash over me. My instinct screamed to flee, but I needed to find my friends. I turned back, retracing my steps, but the hallway seemed to shift again, disorienting me. I stumbled into a room filled with mirrors, their surfaces tarnished and cracked. I saw distorted reflections of myself, each one more grotesque than the last. My heart pounded as I realized they weren't just reflections. They were faces twisted in agony, mouths open in silent screams. "No!" I shouted, backing away. Suddenly, the whispers crescendoed into a furious roar. "Stay with us!" The mirrors cracked, and dark figures emerged from the shards, their forms blurring as they reached for me with long, claw-like hands. I felt the air grow thick with despair, suffocating me. Desperation fueled my movement, and I dashed through the room, the whispers closing in. I could feel their icy fingers grazing my skin, pulling me toward the darkness. I ran back into the hallway, my flashlight sputtering out, leaving me in utter blackness. I screamed for my friends, my voice echoing in the emptiness, but the mansion swallowed my cries.
The shadows danced around me, enveloping me in a chilling embrace. "You belong here!" they chanted, their voices melding into a haunting melody that reverberated through the air. I fought against the pull, recalling the girl's warning. "You can't let them take you," I shouted, trying to summon any strength I had left. The memories of laughter and sunlight flickered through my mind, sparking a fire within me. I had to escape. With every ounce of willpower, I surged forward, pushing against the darkness. I stumbled into another room, a dining hall with a massive table set for a feast that had long since rotted away. A flicker of hope ignited within me. Perhaps there was a way out here. I dashed toward a large window at the far end, but the shutters were locked tight. The whispers grew louder, a deafening roar of frustration and rage. I could feel their anger swelling around me, threatening to consume me whole. "Join us!" they screamed. I grabbed the heavy candlestick from the table, feeling the weight of it grounding me. "No!" I bellowed, swinging it against the window. Glass shattered, the sound like thunder in the silence. I climbed through the broken frame, shards cutting into my skin, but I didn't care. As I landed outside, the night air hit me like a rush of cold water. I gasped, stumbling away from the mansion, the whispers fading into the night. I looked back, the house looming ominously, its windows dark and empty. I took off into the woods surrounding the property, the trees closing in around me. My heart raced as I pushed through the underbrush, adrenaline propelling me forward. I could still feel the remnants of the whispers in my mind, clawing at my thoughts, but I wouldn't let them take me. I had escaped. As I landed outside, the night air hit me like a rush of cold water. I gasped, stumbling away from the mansion, the whispers fading into the night. I looked back, the house looming ominously, its windows dark and empty. I took off into the woods surrounding the property, the trees closing in around me. My heart raced as I pushed through the underbrush, adrenaline propelling me forward. I could still feel the remnants of the whispers in my mind, clawing at my thoughts, but I wouldn't let them take me. I had escaped. Hours later, I stumbled back into town, breathless and shaken. The warmth of the streetlights was a balm against the cold dread that had seeped into my bones. I had narrowly escaped, but the memories of the mansion haunted me. The girl's face flashed in my mind, her desperate warning echoing as I tried to forget the whispers. I vowed never to return, yet a part of me wondered about the souls still trapped within those walls, longing for freedom. As I lay in bed that night, I thought of the darkness lurking beneath the surface, waiting for the next curious soul to wander into the shadows. I knew I had narrowly escaped, but I would forever be haunted by the whispers of the shadows beneath. The next story is about the Forgotten Asylum. The old asylum on the edge of town had always intrigued me. Abandoned for decades, it stood as a crumbling monument to despair, its windows dark and hollow. Rumors circulated about the horrors that occurred within its walls. Patients driven mad, experiments gone wrong, and the lingering spirits of those who suffered. One chilly autumn evening, I gathered my courage and decided to explore it alone, hoping to capture something paranormal on my camera. As I approached the massive iron gates, an unsettling breeze rustled the dry leaves at my feet. The air felt thick with history and dread. I pushed the gate open, its rusty hinges creaking like the moans of forgotten souls. The pathway was overgrown, leading me through a labyrinth of weeds and wildflowers. The imposing building loomed ahead, its stone facade cracked and weathered. The moment I stepped inside, a chill enveloped me, sending shivers down my spine. The air was stale, filled with the scent of mildew and decay. My flashlight flickered as I moved through the dark corridor, revealing peeling paint and remnants of old furniture. Shadows danced along the walls, creating the illusion of movement just beyond my line of sight.
Is anyone here? I called out, my voice echoing unnervingly. The only reply was the sound of my own heartbeat, thudding loudly in the silence. I felt a growing unease, but curiosity propelled me deeper into the asylum.
I ventured into what appeared to be the common room. Rusted chairs were scattered around, and a large broken window let in a sliver of moonlight. I raised my camera, capturing the haunting beauty of the decay. As the flash illuminated the room, I caught a glimpse of something in the corner, a figure half hidden in the shadows. I squinted, but the figure vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Hello?" I called again, my voice trembling. The air seemed to thicken and I felt a presence, something ancient and watchful. The whispers began, soft at first, like the rustling of leaves. "Help us, help us," they murmured, their voices weaving together in a haunting symphony. A chill washed over me, and the hairs on my neck stood on end. I turned sharply, aiming my flashlight into the darkness, but there was nothing there. Pushing aside my fear, I explored further, moving down a narrow hallway lined with closed doors. Each door seemed to pulse with a life of its own, a lingering energy trapped within. I felt drawn to one door in particular, its surface marred and worn. I hesitated, then gripped the handle and pulled it open. The room was small, cluttered with old medical equipment and stained mattresses. A sense of dread washed over me, but I couldn't look away. In the corner, an old journal lay open on a dusty table. I approached, flipping through the pages, the handwriting frantic and disjointed.
"They're watching me," one entry read. "I can hear them whispering. They want me to stay." Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the hallway, causing me to jump. My heart raced as I turned, pointing my flashlight into the corridor. The whispers crescendoed, filling the air with a desperate urgency. "Join us. Stay with us." I stumbled back, my instincts screaming at me to flee. The weight of the atmosphere pressed down on me, making it difficult to breathe. I dashed into the hallway, the shadows twisting and shifting as I moved. The whispers seemed to follow, wrapping around me like a cold embrace. I rushed toward the exit, but the layout of the asylum had changed. The walls closed in, the doors leading to dead ends, and the whispers grew louder, a chaotic blend of panic and despair. "Help us! Help us!" they cried, tugging at my mind.
In my frantic state, I turned into a room filled with old medical files strewn about. Papers fluttered in an unseen wind, and the air was thick with sorrow. I could feel the presence of those who had suffered here, their pain palpable. A cold breeze brushed past me, and I felt something wrap around my wrist. I turned to find a ghostly figure, a woman, her face twisted in agony, her eyes pleading. "You have to leave. They want you to stay," she cried, her voice echoing in my mind.
"Who?" I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. "Who wants me to stay?" "The ones who never left," she wailed, her form flickering like a candle in the wind. "They'll take you. You have to run." I tore my gaze from her and bolted toward the door, adrenaline propelling me forward. The whispers surged, a torrent of voices crying out in rage. "You cannot leave! Join us!" I sprinted down the hallway, the walls closing in around me. Each step felt heavier, as if the asylum itself was trying to pull me back. My flashlight flickered and died, plunging me into darkness. Panic surged through me as I reached for the wall, my fingertips brushing against the rough surface. I could feel the shadows swirling, brushing against my skin, their icy touch sending jolts of terror through my body. I had to escape. I recalled the layout from earlier, my mind racing. If I could just find the entrance. Desperate, I stumbled through the darkness, my breaths coming in quick gasps. The whispers shifted, becoming more frantic, urging me to turn back. "Stay with us! Stay forever!" But the memory of the woman's plea ignited a fire within me. I couldn't succumb to their despair. I forced myself to move faster, my pulse pounding in my ears. The whispers grew louder, morphing into screams as I fought my way through the oppressive darkness.
Finally, I burst into what seemed to be the main hall. Moonlight poured through the shattered windows, illuminating the exit in the distance. I ran toward it, feeling the shadows clawing at my heels, desperate to drag me back. As I reached the door, it creaked open, and I stumbled out into the night air, gasping for breath. The chill of the outside world felt like salvation, and I collapsed onto the grass, my heart racing. The whispers faded behind me, their cries dwindling into the night. I lay there, staring up at the stars, the horror of the asylum still lingering in my mind. I had escaped, but the feeling of being watched lingered, the weight of those souls still trapped within the walls.
I rose unsteadily, glancing back at the asylum one last time. Its dark silhouette loomed against the sky, a reminder of the pain and suffering hidden within. I knew I could never return. The voices would always haunt me, a chilling reminder of the souls who longed for freedom and the darkness that craved companionship. As I walked away, the wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it the faintest echo of their whispers, a haunting melody of despair that would stay with me forever.
The next story is about the last train. It was a cold, foggy night when I found myself waiting at the dilapidated train station, the only one left in a forgotten town. The air was thick with an unsettling silence, broken only by the distant sound of a whistle that echoed through the mist. My friends had dared me to take a ride on the last train, a ghostly legend said to appear only on the darkest nights. I was curious, maybe a little too curious. As the minutes ticked by, I wrapped my coat tighter around me, shivering against the biting cold. The flickering light of the old lamp cast eerie shadows that danced across the platform. I glanced at my watch, 11:58 p.m. The train was supposed to arrive at midnight, but the oppressive fog seemed to stretch time itself. Just then, I heard the rumble of wheels on the tracks, a low, ominous sound that sent a thrill of fear down my spine. I peered into the fog, straining to see anything through the thick curtain of grey. The sound grew louder, and a ghostly shape began to materialize in the mist. An old steam locomotive, its exterior rusted and worn, belching smoke like a phantom from another era. As the train pulled to a stop, the door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit interior. A chill ran through me as I noticed the conductor, a gaunt figure in a tattered uniform, standing silently at the entrance. His eyes were hollow, devoid of warmth. "Are you getting on?" he asked, his voice a rasp that echoed in the stillness. I hesitated, a twinge of fear gnawing at my gut, but the allure of the unknown was too strong. I stepped onto the train, and as soon as I did, the door slammed shut behind me. The suddenness made my heart race. I turned to find the carriage almost empty, save for a few shadowy figures sitting in the corners, their faces obscured in darkness. I chose a seat near the window, hoping to catch a glimpse of the scenery as we travelled. The train lurched forward, and I felt the familiar sensation of movement, but something was off. The sound of the wheels on the tracks was hollow, echoing unnaturally as if the train were gliding through a void rather than on solid ground. As we sped through the fog, I glanced around the carriage. The figures were eerily still, their features obscured by shadows. I felt a wave of unease wash over me. "Where are we going?" I asked the conductor, who had appeared at the front of the carriage, watching me intently.
"To the other side," he replied cryptically, his gaze piercing. "The final destination." My heart raced at his words, and I forced myself to look out the window. The scenery was indistinguishable, just an endless blur of grey and black. Panic bubbled within me. I turned to the other passengers, hoping to find someone to share my confusion, but their eyes were vacant, staring ahead as if lost in a trance. The atmosphere shifted, thickening with a palpable tension. Suddenly the lights flickered, plunging the carriage into darkness. A cold draft swept through and the whispers began, soft at first like the rustle of leaves but growing louder, more frantic. Help us, they cried, the voices weaving through the air, echoing my deepest fears. I jumped up, heart pounding. What's happening? I shouted, but the conductor simply watched, his expression unchanged. The lights flickered back on, revealing the figures had shifted closer, their faces now visible, hollow-eyed, mouths twisted in silent screams. I stumbled back, horrified. What do you want from me? I yelled, backing toward the door, but it wouldn't budge. The train shook violently, the whispers rising to a deafening roar. Join us! Join us! They chanted, their voices blending into an overwhelming cacophony of despair.
Desperation clawed at my throat as I fought to comprehend what was happening. I thought of the legends, the souls of the lost, trapped forever on the last train. No! I screamed, shaking my head. I won't join you! In that moment of defiance, I felt a surge of adrenaline. I rushed toward the front of the train, dodging the outstretched hands of the passengers. The conductor stood calmly as I approached. Let me off, I demanded, panic coursing through me. He merely smiled, an unsettling grin that sent chills down my spine. You cannot leave until we reach the other side, he said, his voice a haunting melody. But you're already part of us. With a sudden primal instinct, I lunged for the door. I slammed my shoulder against it, and this time it gave way, bursting open into the swirling fog. I tumbled out onto the tracks, the cold air rushing to greet me, filled with the echoes of anguished cries. I scrambled to my feet, heart racing, and ran. The train continued forward, its whistle piercing the night, but I could feel the presence of the passengers behind me, their shadows flickering in the fog. I ran blindly, fear propelling me through the dark, not stopping until I burst into the clearing at the edge of town. The fog receded, revealing the familiar streets bathed in the pale light of the moon. I collapsed onto the pavement, gasping for breath, my mind racing with what I had just experienced. The whispers faded into the distance, but I could still feel their cold breath on my neck. I looked back toward the tracks, my heart pounding as I scanned the darkness for any sign of the train. There was nothing, only the emptiness of the night. Had it all been a nightmare? I shuddered at the thought, but knew deep down that it was real. As I walked home, the weight of the experience settled heavily on my shoulders. I could still hear the whispers echoing in my mind, a haunting reminder of the souls trapped on that last train, yearning for release. I had escaped, but I knew they would always linger, waiting for the next curious traveler to board their final journey. The next story is about the Hollow House. It was a stormy night when I first stumbled upon the Hollow House, an eerie structure shrouded in fog and legend. The locals whispered about its past, a family that vanished without a trace, leaving behind only the husks of their lives. The air crackled with electricity as I approached, drawn by a mix of curiosity and dare. Lightning flashed, illuminating the silhouette of the house, revealing its cracked windows and sagging roof. The front door stood slightly ajar, creaking as the wind pushed it open further. I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the chill, and stepped inside. The air was thick with dust and the scent of mildew. My flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing a grand foyer filled with cobwebs and peeling wallpaper. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional creak of the floorboards beneath my feet. I felt as if the house were alive, watching me with its empty eyes. As I explored, I came across a staircase spiraling upward, the wood worn and uneven. I felt an irresistible urge to climb, curiosity overriding my instincts. Each step echoed like a heartbeat in the stillness, and with every step the atmosphere grew heavier. At the top, I found a long hallway lined with doors, each one closed and seemingly holding its breath. I hesitated, feeling an uncanny energy radiating from the rooms. I chose the first door on the left and slowly pushed it open. Inside, the room was frozen in time. Old furniture covered with sheets, a dust-laden mirror, and a child's toys scattered across the floor. A sense of sadness washed over me as I looked around. It felt as if the laughter and joy that once filled this room had been sucked away, leaving only echoes. I turned to leave, but as I did, I caught a glimpse of something in the mirror, a fleeting shadow that vanished as quickly as it appeared. I shivered, unease creeping into my bones.
I continued down the hallway, opening each door in turn. Each room told a story of loss. A dining room with chairs pushed aside as if the occupants had left in a hurry, a bedroom with a neatly made bed, untouched for years. The further I went, the more the whispers returned, soft, mournful voices that seemed to call out from the walls, begging for recognition. "Help us, remember us," they pleaded, their tones weaving together in a sorrowful tapestry.
I reached the last door at the end of the hall, its surface marred and old. As I turned the handle, a chill ran down my spine. The door swung open, revealing a dimly lit room filled with old photographs hanging crookedly on the walls. They captured moments of a family, smiling and happy, but their eyes seemed to follow me, filled with a haunting sadness. In the center of the room stood a large, ornate mirror, its frame intricately carved with vines and flowers. I stepped closer, mesmerized by the reflection, but as I gazed into it, the room behind me faded away and I was pulled into a vision. A family gathered around the table, laughter filling the air. Then, in an instant, it shifted to chaos, a storm shouting and the house shaking violently. I stumbled back, the vision shattering like glass. The whispers surged, louder now, drowning out my thoughts. "You must know the truth," they cried. "We cannot rest." Panic set in as I backed away, feeling the temperature drop around me. The air turned electric, and I could see my breath misting before me. The mirror glowed faintly, pulling me closer as the whispers transformed into anguished screams. I could almost see the faces of the family, twisted in pain, begging for release. In that moment, a surge of clarity broke through the chaos. I remembered the stories, the family that had been trapped in this house, their lives snuffed out too soon, bound to the mirror and its sorrow. I needed to fight back, to reclaim my own life. "I won't join you," I shouted, summoning all my strength. The whispers paused, and I focused on the mirror, recalling the joy that once filled the house. "I remember you," I cried. "You lived here. You were happy." The energy shifted, the mirror's glow flickering. I took a step closer, the warmth of my memories pushing against the cold shadows that surrounded me. "You are not forgotten," I yelled, my voice steady and resolute. The mirror cracked, the sound echoing through the room like a thunderclap. The whispers turned to cries, a mix of relief and sorrow. "Thank you," they whispered, the anguish lifting like fog in the morning sun. "Thank you." With a final surge of energy, the door burst open and I stumbled out into the hallway, gasping for breath. The house felt different now, the oppressive atmosphere lifting as I fled down the stairs. The walls no longer whispered, they sighed as if finally at peace. I burst through the front door, the storm outside having calmed. As I stood on the porch, catching my breath, I looked back at the hollow house. It loomed silently, its secrets no longer threatening, but instead a memory of the lives it once held. I had escaped, but the experience lingered in my mind, a haunting reminder of the past. The whispers had quieted, but I would carry the story of the family with me, ensuring they were never forgotten again. As I walked away, the weight of their sorrow felt lighter, their presence now a gentle echo of hope rather than despair. The next story is about the Whispering Woods. The night wrapped itself around me like a suffocating blanket as I stepped into the woods. A sense of dread clawed at my throat, but curiosity pushed me forward. They called it the Whispering Woods, a place where the air crackled with unease and shadows danced beneath the gnarled branches. The locals warned me, of course, but I had always dismissed their superstitions. Tonight, I would prove them wrong. As I ventured deeper, the moonlight flickered through the leaves, casting eerie patterns on the ground. The trees loomed above, twisted and contorted, their bark resembling gnarled fingers clawing at the sky. Each crunch of fallen leaves underfoot echoed in the stillness, amplifying the silence that enveloped me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, as if the very woods were alive, their gaze penetrating the darkness. I took a deep breath, the air thick and damp, laden with the scent of decaying foliage. An unsettling chill slithered down my spine. I had a flashlight, but it barely pierced the inky blackness ahead. Every beam seemed to bend around the trees, revealing nothing but more shadows. That's when I heard it, a faint whisper, barely discernible, floating through the air like a lost soul. "Turn back!"
I stopped dead in my tracks, heart pounding. I shook my head, trying to dismiss it as the wind, but the voice was clear, urgent. It sounded like a warning. Swallowing my fear, I called out, "Hello, is someone there?" The woods responded with silence, thick and oppressive, wrapping around me like a noose.
I pressed on, the whispers growing louder, intertwining with the rustling leaves. They seemed to echo my own thoughts, taunting me, "Stay, stay, stay." Panic welled up within me, but the thrill of exploration pushed me forward. I stumbled upon a clearing, a patch of moonlight spilling onto the ground like liquid silver. In the center of the clearing stood a massive oak tree, its branches sprawling like the arms of a giant, twisted and bare. At its base, the earth was disturbed as if something had been unearthed recently. My curiosity piqued. I knelt down, brushing away the dirt with my fingers, revealing a tattered journal, its pages yellowed and brittle. As I flipped through the pages, I felt an icy breeze caress my neck. The journal contained frantic scribbles, accounts of a man who had entered these woods decades ago, driven mad by the whispers. His handwriting devolved into chaotic scrawls, but one line stood out. "They want you to stay forever." A chill shot through me and I quickly shut the journal, the whispers rising again, now more insistent. "Join us, join us." The forest seemed to pulsate with a life of its own, shadows stretching and contracting around me, forming dark shapes that danced at the edges of my vision. Just then I heard a snap of a branch behind me. I spun around, the flashlight illuminating nothing but darkness. My breath quickened and I stumbled back towards the tree. My back pressed against the rough bark, grounding me, but the whispers continued to flood my mind, drowning my thoughts in a cacophony of dread. "Help us! Help us!" I closed my eyes, trying to shut out the overwhelming sensation of being trapped. But when I opened them again, the clearing was different. The moonlight seemed dimmer, as if a thick fog had rolled in, obscuring my surroundings. I could no longer see the path I had come from. Panic surged as I realized I was lost. Desperate, I turned back to the journal. Maybe there was something else, a way to escape this nightmare. As I flipped through the pages again, I caught a glimpse of a drawing, a crude depiction of the oak surrounded by dark figures. My heart dropped as I recognized the shapes. They looked like the shadows that had been lurking at the edge of my vision. Suddenly, a piercing scream shattered the night, echoing through the trees. It was a sound of pure agony, and I felt it resonate in my bones. "Run!" I shouted into the void, but the whispers only laughed, a chorus of malevolent joy that twisted my insides. With my heart hammering in my chest, I took off into the woods, the beam of my flashlight flickering wildly. The whispers pursued me, a relentless tide of sound that made it impossible to think. I zigzagged through the trees, branches clawing at my skin, their jagged edges tearing my clothes as I sprinted blindly. The path seemed to shift and morph around me, the familiar turning into a nightmare landscape. Every step felt heavier, as if the earth was trying to swallow me whole. I could still hear that scream, echoing in the distance, growing louder, more desperate. It sounded like a plea for help and a warning. Stay. Join us. My breath came in ragged gasps, but I pushed on, a primal instinct driving me forward. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to escape the clutches of the woods. The whispers turned into shouts, a cacophony of voices, each one trying to pull me back, to keep me there, forever entangled in their dark embrace. Finally, I burst through the underbrush, stumbling into another clearing, this one illuminated by the pale moonlight. But it wasn't just a clearing, it was a graveyard. Tombstones jutted from the ground like jagged teeth, each one covered in moss and the remnants of time, and in that moment, I understood. The Whispering Woods didn't want to let me go. They wanted another soul to feed their insatiable hunger. My vision blurred as the darkness closed in, and I felt my strength fading. As the world around me faded, I heard the voice again, a soft whisper that filled the void. Stay with us, forever. I succumbed to the shadows, lost to the woods, a voice among the whispers, forever urging others to join the cursed dance of the trees. Darkness enveloped me completely, and I felt a strange disconnection from my body. The cold ground beneath me was no longer solid. I floated in an abyss of whispers and shadows, an eternal limbo where time held no meaning. The echo of my thoughts intertwined with the voices, and I realized I was no longer an observer. I was part of them. Memories flickered through my mind. My family, my friends, the warmth of the sun on my face. But each recollection was gradually replaced by the whispers of the woods, each one tugging at me, drawing me deeper into their embrace. You are one of us now, they said, their tones sweet yet sinister. You belong here. Suddenly I felt a tugging sensation, as if the forest was pulling me from the depths of my consciousness. I opened my eyes, or thought I did. I found myself back in the clearing beneath the massive oak, but everything was different. The moon hung low, a sickly hue casting grotesque shadows over the ground. I was not alone. Figures moved in the dark, their forms shifting like smoke. They surrounded me, their faces twisted in pain, yet their eyes bore an unsettling emptiness. They reached out, their hands claw-like, beckoning me closer. Stay with us. Help us, they murmured, their voices like the rustle of leaves. I tried to scream, but no sound emerged. Panic surged as I realized my body had become an echo, a vessel for the forest's will. I could feel their despair merging with my own. I was trapped, bound to this place by an unseen force, and I understood the horror of it. I was one of them now. The memories of who I was began to fade, replaced by an insatiable longing to draw others into the woods. I saw a flash of light in the distance, a beam of my flashlight, flickering weakly as someone else ventured into the forest. The thought ignited a primal urge within me, a need to reach out, to warn them. But the whispers constricted around me, stifling my voice. No! I screamed in silence, fighting against the tide of darkness. I had to escape this nightmare. The light approached, a figure now clearly visible, a young man oblivious to the fate that awaited him. Turn back! I tried to shout, but the whispers drowned my words, their chorus swelling with delight at the thought of another soul to ensnare. Desperation clawed at my insides. I forced myself to focus, recalling my life before the woods. Memories surged back, laughter, warmth, love. I would not let this place take me completely. I had to fight back. With every ounce of willpower, I pushed against the shadows binding me. A piercing scream tore through my mind. the tortured cries of the souls trapped here. "You cannot leave," they howled. Their voices a cacophony of despair, but I wouldn't let them win. As I focused on the young man, I felt a connection forming. I could sense his fear, his confusion. He paused, shining the flashlight around the clearing. I poured every ounce of my being into one final attempt. "Run!" I thought, willing the urgency into the air. "Turn back!" His eyes widened, and for a moment our gazes locked. I could see the flicker of recognition. He hesitated, a moment of doubt creeping into his mind. The whispers grew frantic, urging him to come closer, to abandon the light of the world outside. "Join us! Stay!" But the memory of my life sparked something within him. I could feel his resolve wavering as he shifted on his feet. What is this place?" he murmured, fear palpable in his voice. In that moment of clarity, I realized that I could channel my energy into a single action. Summoning the strength I had left, I reached out with all my might, willing him to see the truth. "It's a trap. Leave now," I projected, a fierce determination flooding my thoughts. The young man turned, glancing back toward the path he'd come from. The whispers intensified, swirling around him like a violent storm. "No!" they shrieked. "Stay with us!" But the seed of doubt I had planted took root. He turned away from the darkness and sprinted back into the trees. Relief washed over me, but the shadows howled in rage. I felt their fury lash out, and it struck me like a cold wave, knocking me backward. I stumbled, caught between two worlds, the one he was fleeing and the one I was bound to. The whispers turned to wails, their lament a sound of pure fury. "You will pay for this betrayal." As they closed in, I felt a surge of energy rise from the depths of my being. I remembered every moment of joy, every laugh, every second of light I had experienced. I channeled it into a desperate cry for freedom. "I won't be one of you," I screamed in my mind, willing myself to break free from the suffocating grip of the woods. The shadows recoiled, and for the first time I felt a shift in the air, a crack in their hold. I took a step back, feeling the weight of the darkness lift just a little. "This is not my home," I declared, and with that a burst of light erupted from within me, filling the clearing with a blinding glow. The shadows writhed in agony, shrieking as they were pushed back. I ran, racing toward the edge of the clearing where the trees thinned out. I could feel the pull of the woods behind me, but with every step, the light grew stronger, illuminating my path. I could hear the distant echo of the young man's footsteps fading into the night, a reminder that escape was possible. With a final surge of energy, I burst through the line of trees into the open night air. I collapsed onto the forest floor, gasping for breath as the woods howled behind me, their whispers fading into the distance. I lay there, staring up at the stars, feeling the cool earth beneath me. I had escaped, but I could still hear the remnants of the whispers in my mind, a haunting reminder of the souls trapped within. I would never forget the price of curiosity or the cost of wandering into the whispering woods. The experience changed me. The woods would always call to me, a seductive whisper in the back of my mind, but I knew the truth. They would always hunger for more souls, waiting for the next curious wanderer to step into their dark embrace. And as I stood up and turned away, I swore to myself that I would never return. But even as I walked away, a part of me couldn't shake the feeling that the woods were watching, their eyes in the shadows, waiting for their chance to reclaim me forever, part of their whispers.